Debbie, welcome to the show. Tell me about your vision.
Well, Harry, I'm so glad to be here. And my vision is one where, in the short run, right, if I can get a leadership team to really unlock and work together in a different way, in a multiplier way, and not leave potential on the table, and not leave impact on the table, and not leave smarts on the table and experience on the table. If they can come together in a cohesive way, I know the results are going to be better. And not only are the business results going to be better, work for them is going to be less stressful. And so then I go to the cumulative effect. So we have a leadership team that's more effective, more impactful, and less stressed. Their families experience less stress. The people they are leading will experience less stress. So I don't think work has to be a 4-letter word. I mean, okay, it is 4 letters, but you know what I mean. It doesn't have to be a dirty word. It doesn't have to be unpleasant. It should be a place where, as adults, we go to live into our gifts and live into the impact that we can make. And leadership teams are such a big part of promoting that or getting in the way. I see the power of teams, and my vision is to work with as many teams as possible so that they can really be the best they can be. And it's great for their shareholders, it's great for their employees, but ultimately it's great for them as human beings, and it's great for their families. So I really feel there's a way that I can unlock them. They can get the results and just remove friction and remove stress and improve results.
Tell me more about that. I'm very, very curious on the stories, how you got to this point
Mhm.
and why you got to this point about your vision. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think so. I was in the corporate world for over 25 years, and I've been in consulting, I've been in industry, I've been in private sector, nonprofit sector, public sector, and I've been in the US, I've worked overseas. And I think, like all of us, we've seen when teams work. We know when we're in that impactful team. And the more and more work that I started to do on people strategy and working with more senior leaders the latter part of my career, the more I'm looking at the complexity of this world and going, we need teams. You don't have what you need to do all on your own to thrive anymore. You need the team around you. Right. So
Yes.
those days of those solo, I mean, you still have those solo folks, but for the most part, we need each other. And so how do I really lean into that? And I remember hearing someone had said to me recently, I don't know, a few years ago, okay, imagine you have a team of 5 people. Is the team of 5 even producing the output of 5 individuals, or are they sub-optimized? Are we paying attention to not just the 5, but the plus and the plus and the plus and the plus, the in between? So if we know that teams are critical for today's work and for tomorrow because we don't know what's coming, but together we have a better chance. And we know what it's like to be on those impactful teams. I realize that's what gives me joy. I love working with teams. I loved being an individual coach, and I love that spark when I work with executives. And prior to being a coach and alongside being a coach, I've always been in the organizational development space, right? I work with teams more as an expert or as a consultant. And this path that I'm on now brings my two loves together. So I know teams, I know systems, I know how to think about that, and I know how to coach. And I think there's this real need now where executive teams, they need more. They don't need these one-off strategy sessions. They're important. They don't need a one-off team development session. That's important. They need to learn how to work together differently. They need to unlearn habits that just happen over time. And they need to make intentional choices about here's where our business is going and here's what we need to do. So that's, I think, the meta of where my vision came from, and just seeing the power of teams, of having some real joys and highlights in my experience and having some real pain points and lowlights in my experience. And they were always at the team level. And then just, I think, learning more about the space and going, the world's just going to get faster and more complex, and the need for leadership teams is so much more now. So I just figured, like, what can I do with my strengths and my gifts to help them? And that's what I feel good about. So that's a little bit more. I'm happy to delve further, but that's a little bit more in the backstory anyway.
Thank you for sharing that, and I'm happy to hear more. Have you read the book Five Dysfunctions of a Team?
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's one of those books that talks a lot about these things. Um, what would you say, Debbie? Then, how did you get started on this path, like the entrepreneur path
No.
of I think leaving the corporate world and then diving deep into um, your own path and helping people through your own business strengths.
Yeah.
Where did that come from, and how did that get started?
I think it's a great question, Harry. And I think a lot of us that do coaching, so I went through my own graduate school experience, and then I had an opportunity at a company to really oversee the coaching cadre of external coaches. And I was talking to my then boss, and I said, I would really like to deepen my skills as a coach. And he's like, absolutely, you should. And so that started my own sort of executive coaching journey on the more formal level. And even since then, even though I've had industry jobs and I had more and more senior roles, I always had a small sort of cadre of clients that I kept external. And I mentioned to you just when we logged on, I live just outside of Chicago. Well, for 4 years, my family and I, we lived in Maine, which for people outside the U.S., it's the northeast most part of the country. Kind of sticks out there. It's closer to sort of like the maritime provinces in Canada. There's a big saying of you can't get there from here. It's a very different place. And and the thing about Maine that's beautiful, it's rugged, it's further from away, is everybody has what they call a side hustle. And I think I was really kind of leaning into what am I doing in this coaching and consulting space? And I realized I'm getting a lot of joy out of that. And I had this small voice that was starting saying, when are you going to do this full time? And it was a scary voice for a long time. And then we moved back to the Chicago area. And then the pandemic hit. And I think, like a lot of people in the pandemic, there were a lot of, really key moments where people were looking themselves in the mirror and saying, what's really important? Just before the pandemic, I changed jobs in 2018. And I said to myself, I think this is going to be my last corporate role. I just needed to say that to myself. I didn't know when I was going to leave. It was a wonderful final role for me. I was chief talent officer, and I had an opportunity to build a function and really help a company do part of what I'm really good at doing. And I think the pandemic, I lost both my parents in 2021. I think it was just this time for me to say, if not now, when? And so I took the leap. And being very pragmatic, I told my then boss, and I gave her about a year's notice. And I said, look, I'm accountable for succession. Let's role model a good succession, and let's ramp me down and ramp up your next generation. And in the meantime, I started talking with people about the Plager Group. And here was my vision. Here were those places. And to a person, everyone said, I'm so glad that you get to bring your gifts to more people and to do what you love. And the world needs you. And that was validating, as scary as it was. And so April 8th, 2023, I was fully 100%. I call that my anniversary, even though I was still ramping down, ramping up. Call that my anniversary. So I'm almost finishing my second year. And I'll say it's the hardest thing I've ever done work-wise. I was a good corporate employee. I worked in startups. I worked in Fortune 75s. I worked in mega consulting firms. I know corporate cultures. I know how to navigate and shift. And this was something completely different. And it has been a remarkable journey, and it's wild, and it was really scary, and it's less scary now, but it was really scary in the beginning. And I just kept going back to my vision of what I wanted and needed to do and how I felt like I could contribute to the world.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more and more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.